What's up, people? Welcome to this episode of the By the Hood podcast or webcast. I don't know how you're consuming this content. This is episode 16, and we have another special episode for you. We have a very special guest, man. I was just telling him before we got on air, I don't know too many people in his profession or people that look like me in his profession. But before we get into that, I want to introduce my partner, Core. Core, how you doing, good brother?
What's going on, Jim? How you feeling?
Oh, man, I can't complain. Ain't nobody listening, man. But listen, man, this is going to be another special episode, man. You know, one of the things we like to do is highlight people in our community, people building businesses, people doing work in the community. This brother has his own consulting firm, but outside of that, he's a black mathematician. I don't know about you, Core. How many black mathematicians you know? You know a lot? I know a couple, maybe.
Yeah, I'm stopping at like 3.
Yeah, shout out to Mr. Harper from back in the day. You know, Mr. Harper was
right
back at Central. Like he wasn't no joke, man. So shout out to Mr. Harper. But
yeah,
this brother
right gave me a job at one point.
Oh, nice. I didn't even know that. Didn't even know that. But Mr. Harper was at Central with me and Cora. But nonetheless, man, we got our brother Akil Parker in, and just to give a little brief introduction, he's an adjunct professor at both LaSalle and just starting at Cheney as well.
Right.
But he also owns his own consulting firm. It's All This Math LLC. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about his story, how he got into math. And I know he's also an avid reader, which is something we talk about here a lot, his book. So we're going to get into that discussion a little bit. But, Brother Akil, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be on here with you two
man.
brothers.
Man, thanks for your time, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I should have been on sooner, but I just had to, get my life together.
Nothing wrong with that.
No doubt, man. But listen, man, I find your story interesting because, like I said, one of the things about our show is we have people from all walks of life that do all amazing things, and we get a lot of feedback from people saying, "Wow, I didn't know people look at me, that look like me, do this or do that." And I'm pretty sure that'll be a response to this, being a mathematician.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of brothers and sisters out there who are mathematicians. I just don't know them personally. But So give us a little bit about your background. How'd you get into that field, and how'd you fall in love with math?
Background. I guess I would start with just, so I was born in New York. I traveled around a lot, not a lot, a few places. Born in New York, grew up in Baltimore though. So basically Baltimore raised me for the most part. Went to Morgan State. Well, went to Morehouse for 1 year, then transferred to Morgan State, which is in Baltimore. Got my degree in finance from Morgan State. I dropped out of college though. So I was a college dropout for 2 years. I went back though, because I realized, at that point I was just chasing money. And I realized that I'd be able to make more money with a college degree than without it. Even though at that time, I think I was like 21, the money I was making seemed cool, but I was glad that I saw, more money in my future with having a degree. So ended up going back to Morgan State, graduating from there in December 2003. I ended up moving to Philadelphia, mainly because of a girl that I had fell in love with back in the day. She ended up being the mother of my oldest son, Naseem. So that was way back in the day. But because he just turned 14 yesterday.
Sheesh. Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations.
He's getting old. But I was a finance major. I got a degree in finance from Morgan. I ended up working for the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Worked for them for a year, but it wasn't like the kind of sexy finance investment stuff that I wanted to do, that I studied in undergrad. It was more on the accounting audit side, which I really wasn't prepared for, just to keep it 100. And I kind of was in there. I came in, I was hired as a trainee, but I wasn't being trained. And, so I kind of was just kind of winging it. And, I wasn't really doing well. So it wasn't long, and I didn't like the environment. I really didn't like the people I was working with anyway. But it was one of those so-called good government jobs, that people tell you to get.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even on the GS level, because the most government jobs, you're a GS whatever, GS3, GS10, whatever. It was a different pay grade. It was a different whole scale. So it was like they was on like a CG level. So it was like a higher grade altogether. With these government corporations. So I only worked with them for like a year. So I was there for a year. I left. I had aspirations of going to graduate school, maybe getting a master's in economics. I really didn't know what I was going to do, just to be honest. I knew I had a baby on the way though, so I knew I had to do something. I didn't want to sit around and allow his mother to take care of him, because she was already a school district teacher herself. But I was like, nah, I was raised a little different, not to just let a woman take care of my child.
Understood.
So anyway, so I ended up doing, I got down with this agency. I was riding on the sub one day. I saw an advertisement for this company that hired like substitute teachers and tutors. So I called them, met up with them. I started doing substitute teaching. I didn't want to do substitute teaching. I wanted to do the tutoring, but she didn't have a lot of openings for tutoring. So, but she had mostly substitute teaching opportunities. So I did a couple of them, like one day here, one day there, at some of like the local charters. This is back in like 2005, like early 05. Then she came up with this opportunity at Mariana Bracetti, when it used to be at Kensington and Lehigh, where Sankofa Freedom Academy Charter is located right now.
Okay.
That building. The geometry teacher went out on leave, and they needed a long-term substitute for his position. So it was like a Thursday when she told me about it, or Wednesday when she told me about it. I went in on Thursday, and, I kind of saw the lay of the land. And then she told me, like, go in Thursday and Friday. If you want to stay, call me over the weekend, let me know. If you don't, then I'll find somebody else for it. So I kind of did a little bit of, I guess, as they say, soul searching, thought about it over the weekend, chilled. And I just, I made a decision back then. I said, it's possible I could become a good teacher one day if I, take this opportunity seriously. So I stayed with it, stayed there for the rest of the school year. It was like the whole fourth quarter. So I stayed. It was a 10th grade geometry position. He had like 4 different sections of geometry, the teacher that had left. So it kind of went okay, made a lot of mistakes, learned some things. But it was kind of weird because, as a substitute, you really don't have that much power and influence. Well, I mean, you don't realize the power and influence you have.
Yeah.
So I kind of was just there as a babysitter by being a substitute. But at the same time, since I got to come back every single day, I couldn't play it like a typical substitute. So, I kind of had to play it like an actual teacher.
Okay.
I didn't really know a curriculum. I was just going off of, when I was in 10th grade and when I was in 9th grade and I took geometry, just some of the things that I remembered, just from then.
So you kind of fell into the mathematics thing. It was that wasn't I guess your original aspirations. You fell into it. So at what point did you fall in love with teaching?
Did I fall in love with teaching? It wasn't until I really started reading, because so I was only a long-term sub at that point, and then in the summertime, because I think a lot of people, when they get into teaching, I mean, it's just like how America is set up and built off of like monopoly capitalism, so it kind of motivates us to hustle. Like whatever you're doing, you kind of make it into a hustle. And a lot of people, not everybody, but some people like myself, when I got into teaching, it was a hustle. So, because you work your, Monday through Friday, you find out about the after school program. Okay. How much is that? Okay. Another $25 an hour. Okay, cool. Okay. Y'all got the Saturday program. Okay, cool. How much is that? $30 an hour. Okay, bet I'll be there. And it's kind of like a hustle. I mean, you care about the youth, but a lot of times you don't really, your main focus is getting the money. Like you're just trying to get to the bag. Like that's really what it is. At that point, I didn't love teaching. I liked getting a check, and I liked kind of some of the culture of being in school. Because when I was in school, I always went to like the competitive schools, like the magnet programs and whatnot. So I always liked school. Like school was my thing. Like school was my main environment for socializing. So I was always comfortable in school. I wasn't one of the people that like hated school and would cut school all the time. Like that was never me. So when I became a teacher, it kind of was like, oh, I'm back in a place where I'm comfortable at, and I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it was at first, but it wasn't until I started realizing that wow, when I ended up getting a full-time position and I was official and, I had paperwork, when I started teaching at World Communications Charter, that was that following fall. I went in there because what I did was that following fall, I heard somebody told me that charter schools are more lenient. And if you don't have like a degree not a degree, not that you don't have a degree, I had a degree, but if you don't have a teaching certificate, they're more likely to give you an opportunity. So I sent my resume to every charter school in the city just about. And World Communications was one of the schools that called me in for an interview. I went down there and interviewed, the sister that interviewed me. She was like, well, we can keep you on as a possible building substitute. I was like, okay, cool. get home, as soon as I get home, I get a phone call. She's like, she lets me know, she says, well, there's been a change. The 11th grade Algebra 2 teacher, her husband just got a job in Connecticut, so she's leaving next week. Would you like to come back and take her position over? So I was like, hell yeah. You know, so that's when I got my first like full-time actual teaching position. But again, that's when I, first started teaching, and it was kind of a hustle. But a couple years in, I realized that, like these young boys, like they're asking me questions and they're expecting me to have answers. So then I'm like, well, damn, I don't want to tell them the wrong answers because they think I know what I'm talking about. So and I was like, well, shit, I got to make sure I know what I'm talking about. So then I started like reading more vigorously. And then around the same time, like, I started like, kind of, getting down with other people that was like really into the knowledge and like studying books about our history and science and things of that nature, history and whatnot. So, and it kind of helped with the conversations that I would end up having with the students. So a couple years in, that's when I like really, like I would just get more and more serious every year. And then I started to have like a love for it. Just because I just like interacting with the youth and just kind of, I think part of it too is, I guess I kind of get to, not undo the mistakes that I made when I was their age, but they can benefit from those mistakes because it's like I kind of know how this movie ends in some situations, and I get to kind of deal with a lot of those situations that I experienced kind of vicariously through them. Because then I think back and I say, well, I was in the same exact situation and I made this move, but I should have made that move. So then I just let the young brothers or even the young sisters sometimes, I let them know, like, when I was in this situation, this is what I did and this was the outcome. So, I can't tell you I can't make you do anything, but I'm just letting you know this was my experience. So hopefully you benefit from it. Because I don't want you to have that outcome, if it's going to be harmful for you. So that's kind of like when I started to love teaching like later on. But it's always about the relationships you develop with the students, because a lot of times I don't get along with the adults. A lot of times, like it's been some times when I've got along with some of my colleagues.
You telling my story. Telling my story.
Well, that's
my whole story.
That's kind of even with us on the finance side. That's kind of how we ended up doing summer camps for kids, because we would go into communities and try to help the people, what have you, and we saw like the follow through. And it was disappointing a lot of times. Now every once in a while you'll find somebody who like you can help and they'll change your life. But we said, well, I guess it harkens back to the old Frederick Douglass quote about not repairing broken men, but
right. Build strong children.
Build strong children. So
you gotta fix broken men.
Exactly. Yeah. So but you mentioned how reading was something that kind of like changed your life, and I know you're an avid reader now. You're a huge proponent of reading, and I've even stolen your hashtag read or die, but
by all means.
So did you grow up as someone who loved to read, I should say, or is that something else that developed later on in life?
That developed later on. I didn't really like reading when I was young. I read if I had to because of school, and I wish that I had been a more voracious reader when I was younger, because then a lot of things even though when you read books at different points in your life, they mean different things to you.
Absolutely.
Based upon your own life experience.
Yes,
I read the autobiography of Malcolm X when I was 21. I wish I had read it earlier, but I read it when I was 21, and I need to read it again. So when I'm 39 now, I know that when I read it straight through, like if I read it this year, it's going to be a totally different book. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it is. That's one of those books.
I wish I had been.
That specific book I've read like probably once every like 3 years, and you're right. Every time you read it, it's something different.
You become a different person.
You get a different appreciation for it too. But it's funny because you said you didn't like to read when you were younger, and I'm someone like I read at least one book a week and have done so for years. But with that being said, I also didn't grow up loving reading until I had a teacher. Well, a black teacher by the name of Dr. Cooper, who took time to kind of like break books down in a different way. So what he would do is explain to me how books could relate to, whatever I was into at the time, whether that was athletics or hip hop or whatever. But until someone took the time to do that, I didn't really have an appreciation for books. But a lot of times I think that's because of what they're making us read. Right.
Yeah.
And when I was in school, I didn't realize at the time that there were so many books on so many different topics about like things that I have an interest in, whether it is Black history or whether it is sports. There's millions of books on like, you know, sports biographies. Like, but I didn't at the time. It's like, you know, you're forced to read Huckleberry Finn and all these other and all these Shakespeare books, and no disrespect to Shakespeare, but I can't really like that's
all disrespect. That shit is garbage.
Okay, well, all disrespect to Shakespeare, but I'm pretty sure a lot of our kids don't like reading because they're forced to try to, like, you know, force Shakespeare down their throat.
Right, and I think part of it too. So I used to be kind of, you know, on the same type of wave, like, you know, like why we gotta read these white books and whatnot. But what I realized, I think it wasn't until years later in my my teaching career, I had some students that in their English class they had to read Beowulf. So I was like, man, why these black kids read Beowulf? But then it kind of like occurred to me that I think in terms of, I guess if we look, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but it's all related. Actually, it's not off topic actually, because if we look at our condition here as black people in America and just in the world, actually, not just America, but, you know, we are at war. We've been at war, and it really becomes an issue of studying your enemy and knowing your enemy. So if we're talking about, as you say, one of your terms, I'm gonna borrow from the Yakubians.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like in terms of knowing their culture and knowing their behavior and knowing their thinking and their ideology, then once I realized that, I was like, okay, these books do have some value, but as long as you're looking at them through that lens, okay. But a lot of times, here's the problem with the neo-colonial Eurocentric schools. They want us to read those books so we can try to emulate and assimilate and try to be honorary white people. That's why they want us to read Shakespeare. They want us to read Beowulf, and they want us to read like The Red Badge of Courage and The Great Gatsby and all that. So we can say, okay, look, they can try to make us think that this is real humanity, this is real culture. What y'all have and what your ancestors had either doesn't exist or it's nothing compared to this. But if you look at, if you're culturally grounded and you already understand that, well, my people have a culture, it's valid, and you know it's thorough. Our culture is thorough, and then you go at it like, okay, I'm studying y'all just the same way y'all study us, and I'm not studying y'all as a means of trying to idolize and emulate y'all. I'm studying y'all because I want to understand what y'all next move is going to be, because I don't trust y'all. So I need to be ahead of the game, and I also need to be able to educate my own children because I love them and I want to be able to protect them. So I want to be able to impart that knowledge to them. And also just any young people that you just come in contact with. You just want to be able to put them on.
Yeah, that's a whole different way of looking at it. Like that's a lot of game right there, because I don't think a majority of people look at it that way, right?
Yeah. I got like 3 or 4 books by what's his name? Speaking of the autobiography of Malcolm X, you remember the part where he tells the joke about from Barry Goldwater, the senator from Arizona?
Yes.
Yeah.
I bought some of his books. I got some of his books. I'm like, I want to know what y'all talking about. You know, and it's interesting because a lot of times some of those like so-called conservative ideas, again, I think this is, I know Corey hates the term white supremacy, but I'll say Eurocentrism. As a function of, as a consequence of Eurocentrism, you know, some white people will stand up and say, okay, this is how we think, you know, the family should be, or whatever the neighborhood, the community should be.
Yeah.
And you say, and then some of us look at it like, nah. So we go to the liberal side of things just because some white people that call themselves conservatives stood up and said it. But a lot of times, like, nah, a lot of that stuff is just decent in terms of how the community should be. And some of that stuff Marcus Garvey might have said. So we can't just say that, like, you know, because Barry Goldwater, his book, he's talking about we need our own schools. We need to educate our children.
That's you're absolutely right. When you start to break down and read a lot of the works of Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam, if you really think about it, a lot of that's conservative thought, right? Yeah. But no one ever like.
But a lot of the mistake a lot of our people do is we assign ownership of those ideas to, when a lot of times it's just good sense. And yeah, it's just good sense.
No matter who's saying it, it makes sense no matter who says it.
Yeah. And a lot of our people said it first anyway.
Yes.
They just were able to market it more strongly and more aggressively. So we
something we always talking about, the marketing of the ideas, because a lot of the ideas that these Eurocentric authors bring out, they come from our culture.
Right.
their idealism comes from our culture, and what they do is they bastardize it to the point where we don't even recognize it. And so we have to recognize that that's what happened to our ideology. And so when you start talking about this, I know we telling the exact same story. Like I lived almost the exact same existence as far as teaching and not hating the system and falling in love with teaching as I was doing it. So I understand exactly where you're coming from with the reading part of it too. I don't read as voraciously as y'all. I get into about one book a month, not a week, but y'all, you know what I mean? I understand what it means to understand history and understand where all of these ideas come from. So I appreciate that you brought that up.
Yeah, but it's funny.
I don't read one a week though. I'm not that voracious. You know what I mean? I'm a little slower.
Well, it's funny for me that happened because I literally fell in love with reading later in life. Like I said, I had a teacher that taught me how to break down books because before him, I would read books to pass tests. But he's the one that taught me, which is interesting now that I think about it, because both of you brothers have an educational background, and a lot of times when you're as a student, when you have someone that looks like you, that means a whole lot, and that's probably something else we can talk about. But the fact is, once he taught me how to read, I felt and it's funny because even when he taught me how to read, I think the book we were reading at the time, was one of their books too, Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
But at the time though, when he started breaking it down and taught me how to like look at the information and not just read for what it says, but what does this mean to you? Right.
Yeah.
So you read this, what does that mean to you? And once that had that little eye opening, but then as I got older in life and I start realizing like there's so many books out there that I've missed or that actually I can relate to, or you know what? One of the books that I read, and it's going to sound funny, but it's absolutely true. And after I read this book, I just went on like a tear. It was actually The Coldest Winter Ever.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
When I read The Coldest Winter Ever, I said, whoa, you can write this kind of stuff? Like, this is what I see outside. Like, because I
read that. I still need to read that. I have a copy, but I never read it. And that's one of those books that I feel bad about. I feel like there are parts of the true Black culture that I've missed out on because I never, delved into that information. I wasn't exposed to that, but I still need to read that.
Because what it made me realize is you always have like urban lit, you have the Donald Goins novels and all that, but hers was like a drama, but just that happened, within our community. But it was like I knew the people as I was reading this, and that book, I just wanted to tear reading all kinds of books. But and it's funny because people had this thing about like quote unquote street lit or whatever, but I think a lot of people miss that. That's what gets people into reading. Right. You read something like that, yeah.
And the thing is, like I got a lot of love for Sister Soldier. Like, matter of fact, I don't know how, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I found her album on eBay on cassette.
I remember that.
It, and I have it. Like, I think it's in my car right now. Like, just the cassette tape. And I used to listen to it over and over again.
She's about that life, yeah.
Like, she's definitely about it.
You check her on YouTube, like from that. Remember that Phil Donahue episode?
Yeah, she was on absolutely.
Going in on Cornel West and all of them guys, man. But like you said, like that book. So that book kind of activated you. One of the things I was talking to my one of my homeboys about that I realized was, like, we talk about reading and we talk about promoting literacy, but it gets, like with anything, the devil's in the details. And a lot of times you got to be careful with how you introduce people to reading, because so all of us on here, we probably would say, okay, well, The Souls of Black Folk is an important text,
absolutely.
Community. But however, I don't think, what I realize is you can't just, like, a person that don't read at all and may not be as familiar with that type on that I guess, like, I don't want to say intellectual level, but on that reading level, you can't give them that book, because that book, they may be like, what the fuck is this?
No, you're right. You're right. But see, to me,
I disagree a little bit, because I wrote The Souls of Black Folks in 7th grade. So it's not about, it's about.
But that's you. But here's what I'm saying. But that to me is why that book to me will always be important to me. The Coldest Winter Ever is because there's certain references and things she makes in there that makes me want to go read other things. So without The Coldest Winter Ever, I don't go back and read Up From Slavery. I don't read Souls of Black Folks. I don't go back and read, The Miseducation of Negro. Like, that book was kind of like a gateway to like, oh, what's this thing she's referencing? Like, to go read these other things. But if not for me reading that and understanding that, okay, she's drawn from these different things, I don't go back and study text, which most people would consider, important text. But it was that book. And I always tell people that it was that book, which people kind of like misinterpret and they call it, quote unquote street lit. But it was so much more in that text than that. And that's why to me, she's the best at that kind of writing. She's at a different level than, I've read some terrible books too that are quote unquote street lit, where it's like, Johnny walks down the street and shoots Bobby. Like, nah, hers is a lot deeper than that. Like the story she's telling and things that she weaves through the story is on another level, but that's Sister Soldier though. Like everybody's not Sister Soldier.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know, Corey. Maybe it's just me. I don't think I could have handled Du Bois back in when I was in 7th grade. I don't know. I probably would have got frustrated with it. You know what I mean? But my point. So even if it's not that book, my point. I think you get my point is that I think we have to be careful, like which books, we introduce people to it, because it's like you might have to build up. You
got to build calluses.
Yeah. Like I remember, like Nas was, one of my favorite rappers, and I remember, I kind of one thing when one of his interviews, he was talking about like the books that he was reading. He said he liked to read a lot of biographies and autobiographies, and I took that to heart. So then when I started reading, I always try to get I would try to be real hyped to try to get the biographies and the autobiographies just about the people, because I like those, because then you kind of get to see like
you get perspective.
The perspective and the real humanity of them. And it's like, wow, okay, so he was like, it's like, okay, cool. Like I'm sitting in the classroom and it's like 2010 and I got young brothers in here that's like coming to school high and, fucked up, and they got a lot going on. They dealing with trauma and all types of stuff. But then I'm reading this book about, Huey P. Newton or whoever, or somebody from the 1930s. And it's like, they was going through the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They just didn't have iPhones. You know what I'm saying? Like, the condition of our people was insane. And then I think I used that as like a inroads to try to introduce reading to the young people, because they like, I think the way reading is marketed in schools, it's like this boring thing, this thing that is of no value, and it's like you're gonna end up reading books about people that are so unrelated to your existence. That's like, why would I want to learn about this person? But then I'm gonna put you on. I'll let you know, like, no, this person was a lot like you, actually. Like the same issues you go through when you on your way to school, on your way home, what you worry about, what makes you happy, what makes you sad. This person had those experiences too. Y'all are very similar, and he or she even wrote about it and talked all about it and everything.
And Corey, to your point though, I was assigned those texts too. So I went to Ivy Leaf, which was those were books we were assigned. But at the same time, what I recognized later in life is, like I was saying earlier, I read to pass tests. You know what I mean? Not until I read her book later and went back to revisit those texts, which I probably don't go back and revisit them, did I have a full appreciation for what they were actually saying.
I get it. No, y'all not wrong. I'm just, for me, I just think that you introduce reading at whatever level the person is on, like whatever reading level, not even specifically text, but more about, can they understand the words that are being written in the book? Because some people write at different levels. You know what I mean? You have some people that write at, doctorate level, and you have some people like a Sister Soldier who would write on a level where more people could understand what's going on. So I'm thinking more in that context of introduction. Like my introduction to reading was comics. So, I can easily understand every word that was being written.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then I built on that to, read. I went from comics to reading the newspaper to then reading for information. And, you know what I mean? So I built on my skills over time.
Yeah.
So, that's more of what I was talking about. Not, I don't say hide subject matter. I'm saying it's more about reading level than subject matter.
And I think it's interest level too, because some of the stuff, it's like the text could be real complex, but if you really want to understand what this person is talking about, then that'll motivate you. Because I mean, even if you got to sit there with a dictionary next to you, like, damn, what does this word mean? And you'll do it because if your interest level is there, like if you got an old head that will put you onto the book and say, yo, brother, you should read this, and you respect him or respect her, and then you take them seriously, it's like, all right, well, because you said it, I'm gonna read it, and I'm gonna fight, even if I gotta fight my way through it. I'm gonna just fight my way through it. Matter of fact, you mentioned comics. Dr. Greg Carr, the chair of the African American Studies Department down at Howard, he's one of the people that influenced me to try to become a more voracious reader, like in my teaching career, and kind of let me know like how that would help my teaching. And he said that that was comic books was one of his introductions as a youngin, to reading and developing his vocabulary. Because like I never, I know I've heard this from a lot of people. I never really read comics like that, but a lot of people have told me that it's very advanced vocabulary.
It is. Yeah, I've read comics too, but the funny thing is I actually probably read more comics as an adult than even when I was a child, because when you go back and read comics, you recognize like, yo, they're dealing with heavy stuff in some of these books. Yeah, a lot of kids probably not even understanding what they're like. It's a lot of subjects that they talk about or topics that they're approaching that most people don't even talk about, and maybe they get away with it because of the cartoon aspect of it.
Yep, that's exactly why.
but if you actually go, there's some heavy stuff. Even one of the newer books, like so, the newest Black Panther run was written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and but is not for play. I should say, like as they say, like it's serious. It's serious topics being discussed, but they're using that medium, which I think is a powerful medium. But that's the thing though, when you're in school, a lot of times, the way you just broke that down, you're the first person I heard break that down like that in terms of being able to study the other side. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you're the first person I've heard break it down that way, but there's also no balance there. I talked to nephews and little cousins who like, why am I reading this? Like they don't even read anything that relates to them at all. You know what I mean? So I think that the way reading is introduced can be powerful. It can turn people off because, like you said, it's not even marketed well, right? So it's marketed as a boring thing. And if it's marketed as a boring thing, and you're reading a bunch of books with no one that looks like you, no stories you can relate to, and then you're leaving classroom and you're going home and you're dealing with the trauma, the PTSD of where you're coming from. You're like, but there's books about that. There's things that you can relate to, but that's not what they're being assigned, and that's not what they're being taught.
Right.
So culturally relevant material is the thing, though, and which is another important reason why we need people like Akil to be in our classrooms. We need people who want to bring that culturally relevant aspect to our children. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people don't even realize that it's not none of it is culturally relevant to us, and so they just teach it as it's presented. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas a brother like brother Akil, he said, he breaks it down. He lets them know, you know what I mean? This is about what those characters do relate to you, but they relate to you in this way, and he makes it culturally relevant for the student. And so in anything that we're doing when we're talking about Black people especially, it has to be culturally relevant to us. Yeah. Because we, like you said, we don't have that kind of balance in schools. That's why I don't like Shakespeare. All those arts and thous and flowery language that don't pertain to, like, I'm a kid that grew up on rap and hip hop. So as you start talking about art and thou, I start channeling out. I don't care what the story is about. You know what I mean? So and that's how I felt when I was 14, 16, 17 years old. You wouldn't have no arts and no thous. Like, can you give me a hip hop version of Shakespeare that I can understand? And that stuff came along later, but when we was in high school, none of that stuff was relevant to us. Like, come on, man, I don't care how many. Look, Romeo got killed because he was with the wrong chick. If you would have just said it like that, I would have understood it better. The families had beef. And Romeo was you know what I mean? He kept sneaking to their crib. They rumbled, and then he died in the rumble. Like, I understand that, but when you start telling me, Romeo
was violating because she was supposed to, she was off limits.
Yeah, like he was in the wrong place, messing with the wrong chick. If you say it like that, I understand it completely. Easily, it's not hard to digest. But when you start putting all those arts and thous and start talking about light breaking through windows and all kinds of crazy, I don't want to hear that.
I think, to me though, that's one of the more powerful things about like the Malcolm book, is that is like it's not. He's not using unnecessary $10 words. It's very direct. It's philosophy as well as a biography.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of people
It's plain.
once you read that book, because I know a lot of brothers that's the book right there that kind of like, like, whoa, like,
Say plain.
That's the activator.
Yeah, that's definitely activated for a lot of people. But I think that's why, because like you read that book and he's dealing with like, heavy topics and telling his story, but it's like real direct. There's not a lot of pontificating or unnecessary $10 words, I say.
Yeah. And when we talk about culturally relevant pedagogy or curriculum, a couple of things come to mind. The one thing is that it sounds like a new innovation because I think now it's getting a lot of traction. But the reality is under Eurocentrism, they've had culturally relevant curriculum like, forever.
Yep.
It's just relevant to their culture. So now, we saying like in the absence of, because in our own independent schools, it wouldn't even be an issue because everything would be relevant to the children that are going. They wouldn't have to work because our textbooks, all the assignments, everything would be relevant to the recipient, the end user.
Yep.
But since we're in their space, we got to figure out ways to navigate the way. The other thing in terms of like with teaching math, a lot of people. Another concept that I challenge is when people, and a lot of people have said this, and still do, that math is like neutral or like apolitical. They say the same thing about science, like the STEM field. Like,
nothing's apolitical.
Exactly, nothing is. Because I always say like, if I got to sit in a math class and you give me the textbook and you tell me about the formulas and the theorems, and you open up the book and show me pictures of the people that the formulas and the theorems are named after, if they're all white men, that's a political message.
Yep.
Political idea. Because what you're telling me, what you're communicating to me without even explicitly telling it to me, so I guess you're implicitly telling me, is that this ain't for black people. Like that book by Lisa Delpit called Multiplication is for White People. That's the title of one of her books, because she was doing her like practicum or something, and she was observing some students in a classroom. I forget what state she was in, but she was like the young black boy was like, we do addition and subtraction, but the multiplication and division, that's harder. That's for white people. Like they do that.
Wow.
And that's being communicated to our young people in these neo-colonial schools. So that's part of that brings me to like what all this math is about. So I mean, all this math, it's a business. It's a private tutoring service. It's an educational consulting company. But I mean, it's a lot of things. But really, it's me and my wife have been building it, over the past year, and it's really a movement because what I realize is that mathematics in this modern era has never seriously been marketed to black people. And a lot of things have been marketed to black people. Music has been marketed to us. Designer clothes have been marketed to us. Popeye's chicken sandwiches have been marketed to
this week.
And like sports, NBA, NFL, all of those things are heavily marketed to us. But mathematics has never been something that's really been marketed to us. I mean, you've had like these like STEM programs or, within a school, it's like, okay, y'all
have a week.
Y'all might be good at math. So here, y'all come over here. Y'all not like the rest of the quote unquote, the rest of the niggas, quote unquote. So y'all come over here. But even with that, so it's like one of those situations where even it gives the impression of winning, but you still lose. Because like I was the type of student where mathematics for me, I was good at math pretty much throughout all of my formal schooling from K to 12, but mathematics was a tool of assimilation. It was kind of like, oh, you good at this, but this ain't really your people thing anyway. So really it's like honorary whiteness. It's like, oh, you could do the math, cool, but this ain't really for black people. So you one of the good Negroes.
Yeah, you ain't like them.
Exceptional. Yeah, you're not like the rest of them. So, but and a lot of people do well at math, even the young sisters and brothers that excel at mathematics and may go on to get master's degrees or become math teachers or become PhDs in mathematics or go into engineering and science and everything. If they still have that mindset, then
They losing.
They're losing. They're no use to us. And that's why a lot of times we can't count on them to help us build infrastructure. It's like these people would be really brilliant.
Because the math assimilated them into a world of whiteness.
Yeah. And I was talking to a brother, you might have seen him on Facebook. He's based down in Atlanta. Him and his wife, they run the Aya Institute. Wakeza Mazimoyo is the brother's name. And he said something to me, and it just like hit me like a ton of bricks one day. And it was like, he was like, man, we got to take math back.
Yeah, because it's ours.
I was like, oh shit. But like the way you said it, I was like, it sounded real basic, but it was real profound. And then I started thinking about the economic implications of that, because so let's take like the STEM initiatives and all the attention that's been given to STEM. So the STEM initiatives still they're not meant to really change anything fundamentally, because what it amounts to is, okay, we're going to teach some more black kids math to excel in math, but then they still going to go work for the white people. They still going to go work for the Asian people. They still going to go work for the Arabs. So fundamentally, nothing has changed. And I think that the reason that even makes sense to a lot of our children is because if math is the foundation of STEM, and if you say, okay, well, I want to be an automotive engineer, I want to design cars, I want to, and if I know mathematics is the foundation of that, if I believe that mathematics is the domain of some other people, then it makes sense that even if I excel to the highest level within mathematics, if it's somebody else's domain, then why would I think that me and my people should start our own car company to go to war with Nissan or go to war with Toyota? Because in terms of my thinking and the way I was educated, I don't think that this skill I understand it's a valuable skill, but I don't think it's mine. I think it's somebody else's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that plays like some type of subliminal.
I mean, then you combine that with what we're told at a very young age. Like I see people to this day, you're going to do well in school and you're going to get out of here and make something of yourself, right? So
why do we got to get out of here to make something of ourselves?
So you're planning in their head at that moment that you're
telling them they not nothing right now. You're saying right now you're not anything and you got to get out of here to become something.
And your people aren't anything, and you have to get away from them. So the furthest you are away from them, the better off you are. So that you combine that with what you just said, and I mean, and you see it. You see people all the time, like, man, I just got to get out of here. I have to get out, quote unquote, get out. It's never about improving conditions of the overall community. It's about getting away from that community.
Right. And the question is always, Malcolm brought this up, and a lot of people have brought this up. Like, where are you going to? Like, what is your destination?
Mm-hmm.
Like, once you get out, where do you go? And like, where will you go and be comfortable? And is it necessarily better in this place that you think you're going to end up at?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I don't even think people recognize when they say certain things to our children, like what they're actually saying. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
what does that really mean? Like when you really say that, you tell somebody like, you gotta get out the hood. You know what I mean? Like,
so like you just everything about the people in the environment becomes a detriment to you, and you're included in that detriment as long as you're here. Instead of saying that if you and your brother and your sister, whoever they may be, improve the conditions of your environment, then it no longer will look like the environment that it is. Instead of saying, be the change and make the change, they say you got to get out of here, and then and let the people that want to live like that just die in that, in that environment, in that space and in that environment, and that's ridiculous.
But then somebody else comes in and buys your neighborhood, and you turn around and say, "Oh man, like, but you never saw the value in it, though, right?"
Right.
And and it's funny because one thing that I learned from brother James Tompkins, he said it doesn't take much to be a revolutionary. You can just go outside and pick up your trash, and that was like so simple, but to me it was still profound. I was like, yeah, you're right, because if you just go outside and pick up your trash, that's a revolutionary act in a weird way, right? So you have to see value in your people and also your environment, because when you don't, and this is like you said, everything's tied together. So that's tied in with how we look at math. You look at those skills as not being yours. You look at the community as not being yours, but something you have to get away from. So then our best and brightest they have nothing to come back to. So they have, because a lot of it's our fault, and like we don't have any we don't have any infrastructure built up. But at the end of the day, that's something that we're all trying to do. That's what all of us here are collectively trying to do. So with all this math, what is the future for all this math as you move forward with building this movement?
So several things. So one thing is going to be some like type of mathematics, SAT prep for like, groups of, teenagers. And another thing I do want to say for anybody that's listening, a lot of people start SAT prep in high school with their children, even in ninth grade. And I would even recommend starting at middle school, start early on, as a supplement to whatever type of preparation they're already getting. It's not too, because that's the main advantage that, because we look at like, the people that perform well on these tests, a lot of it is just the luxury of time. It's kind of like investing, like, you know what I mean? Like when you're investing, you have time on your side, you have the luxury to be more aggressive with your portfolio.
Yeah.
So, but if somebody is like, it's like, damn, I'm 55, you know what I mean? I can't really be aggressive as I could have been when I was 25, because I don't. So when you're in high school, you're in 11th grade, and you're like, okay, I'm trying to go to college in 2 years. I got to cram, I got to go hard, and it's you're a teenager. You might need a job. Because life might, you might be required to pay your own cell phone bill or pay your class dues on your own. So when you're younger, you don't have as many responsibilities. So in terms of like whether it's SAT prep or just general, just mathematical preparation, because I mean in the system that we live in now, the way things are set up, a lot of the careers that will be available, I tell people all the time, like we can't plan for like, the careers that are available today. We got to plan for, it's like a quarterback throws a football, throws a pass. He doesn't aim to put the ball where the receiver is when the ball is hiked. He aims, throws the ball where the receiver is going to end up at. So you got to be thinking like, well, what jobs or opportunities will be available 20 years from now, 30 years from now, not necessarily just right now. And in terms of preparing ourselves for that, like those mathematical skills should be developed. Those science skills should be developed. I mean, literature and language arts is always going to be important because you have to know how to communicate, and you have to not only communicate verbally, but communicate in the written word. In a written form. You got to be able to do that. And again, it takes us back to the reading because good writers are good readers because that's where you get your example of how not to say that you have to exactly adopt another person's writing style, but you just get a lot of examples of, okay, this is good writing. Kind of like, the best rappers, who did they study? Like
they emulated someone.
They studied other great people and then they became great. And then they might have used their style to help to influence their own style.
Let me ask you a question because you brought up the SAT. What is your opinion on like standardized tests?
My opinion on standardized tests is I think at this point it's a necessary evil. I think that they may not be as they're testing. Well, let me say this: it's a hoop that we have to jump through. And when I've done SAT prep in the past, one thing I try to let people know about the socio-political aspects of it, so they'll understand what they're getting themselves into. It's not a test of inclusion. It's not a test to say, oh, it's an excuse. It's a reason. It's a bona fide and
reason to exclude.
Formalized reason to exclude you, because if you don't get this certain score, either I'm not going to give you any scholarship money, or I'm just not going to accept you at all. And this is a justifiable reason for you not to have access to this space, so you can. And it's really all just part of social engineering, because then if you deny people access to college, and in this system it says, okay, you need a degree to earn a certain amount of resources on a biweekly or annual basis, then I can kind of structure the society to maintain a permanent underclass. I can, kind of play around. I can manipulate how many members will be within the so-called middle class. We can just limit people's opportunities. Because if the school is supposed to prepare you for tests like that, and the schools are definitely not preparing people for tests like that, and then maybe their parents don't have the ability, their parents or their guardians or their community doesn't have the ability to prepare them for that, then they're going to be excluded, and things are going to be much more difficult for them down the line in terms of them having access to resources, the resources that the society has available to it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people the people that do have the resources, they're doing the SAT prep like early on. I think there's been a lot of also in terms of just standardized tests in general. There's a lot of conversation around like people being anti-standardized tests, and of course I don't like standardized tests, but my position is more so like let's just like train our children to, if it's a necessary evil, let's just train our children how to deal with them, how to get as high a score possible on it, just get it out the way. Let's train our children to render this test irrelevant.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like whether it's the SAT, the ACT, whether it's the Keystone. The Keystones don't actually, well, quote unquote, they don't count per se. So I guess that's just another hustle because somebody's still getting paid to print all those tests.
Yeah.
Come up with those questions, and somebody's getting paid to grade them, even though they don't really. At this point, every year they keep saying that next year they're gonna be a requirement for graduation, but it hasn't happened yet. Ever since they replaced the PSSA in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. But, it's all political games and,
it's all politics. But another question I want to ask you, because you're someone who went to multiple HBCUs and now you're getting ready to start teaching at one. What's your opinion on the importance of HBCUs in 2019 and moving forward? All
right. This is one of my favorite questions. So, importance of HBCUs. I think HBCUs, I will say this, HBCUs are not a panacea. HBCUs are far from perfect. HBCUs were not established with the idea of liberating us. However, I do think that HBCUs provide a space, generally speaking, provide the most adequate or sufficient space possible for us to create maroon spaces where we can do some organizing to try to do some serious nation building. Now, of course, that's not to say that if you go to a HWCU, as my man says, historically white college or university, that you can't work toward nation building, because a lot of our people historically have went to the white schools and worked toward nation building. And honestly, it's a lot of people that have went to the white schools that's been way more down for the cause than some of these Negroes that go to HBCUs. And that's something, when Kwame Ture got to Howard in, I think, either 60 or 61, that's one of the first things he noticed. It was like, these people, they just trying to get chicks and show off their sports cars.
That's where a lot of our black bourgeoisie comes from.
Yeah, exactly. So, so the thing is like, I mean, they're caveats. You know what I mean? Like, and I'll be honest, like I'm very introspective and self-reflective. When I went to Morgan, I was a bourgeois Negro. I went to Morehouse for my freshman year. And the main reason I went to Morehouse was because, kind of like this, I went to a high school in Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, or Poly. It's kind of similar to it was like the Central of Baltimore.
Okay.
Except the percentage of blacks was much higher than it is a Central. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like, so you go to that high school and you already walk around Baltimore like your shit don't stink.
Okay.
Right? So I knew Morehouse was one of those, I always heard the stories about being a Morehouse man and, what that means and everything. And, how the sister's going to give you love and give you play and all that type of stuff. That's really it. It's like, I'm going to be the shit just because I'm attached to this institution. This institution is going to render me one of the elites, and I'm going to be better, at least in the eye of the community. I'm gonna be seen as better than other people.
Yeah,
that was my mentality. That's why
you got to figure out which community though. Like,
yeah, but you know what though? That's why a lot of us go to college in general. Right. But I understand. Yeah, but I understand that perspective too. Like, but that's how Morehouse is marketed. So. It's funny how a lot of our conversation is revolved around how things are marketed, right?
Because that's how marketing is part of our environment that we don't talk about a lot, but is a constant part of our environment. Everything that we see and that we hear is something marketing to us about what we should be doing, right? Because only 5% of what we do is controlled by the conscious mind. So if the world is being marketed to us subconsciously all the time.
Yeah.
And so we got to be very careful about our environments. And like you were saying, and not looking at things as a panacea and knowing that everything is being marketed to us will help in understanding and solving a lot of these problems that we're talking about.
Right. Because I recognize kind of, I guess, the growth and development on my part. Because I would say, looking back, when I graduated from Morgan State, it was 2003. I would say that at that point, my outlook was my degree was mine. It was my degree. I was on it like, I worked hard, I studied, I stayed up all night, I took these tests, I wrote these papers. But when I graduated from Lincoln, almost what feels like a lifetime later, in 2015, my degree belonged to the community because my degree was going to be used. So my degree from Morgan was just meant for me to just secure the bag, just to get money and kind of my dream, I had a simple dream. My dream when I graduated from college was to have 2 cars. I wanted a bucket to drive to work every day during the week, and I wanted a little luxury car to pull out on the weekends.
It's amazing. It's amazing in retrospect. Yeah, but it's amazing in retrospect, like how crazy.
I had the '92 Honda Accord that I had got my last year of college. I drove that back and forth to the FDIC down in Claymont, Delaware, right off of 95, right across the street from the Home Depot and the liquor joint. What's the big liquor joint?
Yeah.
I know you're talking about,
like grocery store, the Sam's liquor spot, whatever. And I drove that Monday through Friday, and then I would come in from work on Friday. I would hit the streets Friday night, Saturdays. I had the 96 Acura RL. And it was clean. It was 04 when I got it. So it was already 8 years old, but when I bought it, it only had 40,000 miles on it. It was 8 years old. It was clean. That's all I cared about. That's really all I cared about back then.
That's hilarious.
At that point in my life, that's really all I cared about. Just bourgeois Negro shit.
Yeah. And it's funny how, like I said, a lot, and that wasn't any disrespect because I'm a huge supporter of HBCUs. I went to Lincoln, but I recognize that too. But that's another beauty of the beautiful thing about going to an HBCU, for me at least, was the understanding that we're not monolithic people, right?
Right.
So on Lincoln's campus, we had the black bourgeoisie, then we had like the street cats, and then you had like the athletes. Like, but these are all brothers and sisters. But it's like you can see the difference right there. The spiritual cats, the Christian cats. You know what I'm saying? The militant brothers, like, you know what I mean? Like that's all part of like culture at a HBCU, is all those various groups.
Yeah. So that's why when the white schools, and again back to marketing, like Corey was saying, like when they try to play this game about in all their brochures, they're kind of pushing this whole diversity thing, like, and I can't, if I had $1 for every person that told me in high school, like, nah, I'm not going to an HBCU because I need some diversity. You know what I mean? Like, the world ain't just black people, so I need to, like, well, actually, you're gonna, like, there's so much diversity within our community, and we get to HBCU, it's gonna be brothers from the islands, brothers from the continent, brothers and sisters from everywhere, and even within this nation, within the United States, somebody. I mean, there's a lot of things that are universal that connect us, but sisters and brothers from California, from Baltimore, from DC, from Miami, from Chicago, from Houston. Like, we're very much the same, but at the same time, we got differences. So there's like diversity that we can pull from. We can gain appreciation for.
It was a brother when I was in Lincoln that was from like Pittsburgh, and I used to laugh because like, yo, we're in the same state, but I don't know, his culture was completely different. I'm like, yo, right. But I mean, that's one of the things. It was a brother from California, but you're right. Like, you get to see all these different cultures within our community, and to me that was a beautiful thing. So I always wondered like how you felt about the HBCUs. All right, so moving forward though, you know, All This Math is something that you're building out for the community, and we talked about your love for books. So let's get into specific books before we get out of here. I want to know, and I know you've read books for days. You've read all kinds of books, but if you can narrow it down to maybe 5 books that you would say changed your life. I just want to see if I can, I want to add this to our list and also have our listeners maybe look at these books. If you could give me a couple books that changed your life, what would those books be?
So this is one of them right here. Black Power by Kwame Ture and Charles V. Hamilton.
Okay.
This definitely changed me. But this was like, just being introduced to Kwame Ture. Well, I guess reintroduced. I was reintroduced to him, I guess, in the the early, maybe like 07, 08. I was first introduced to him through hip hop on Boogie Down Productions' Edutainment album, came out in 1990 when he was on all the interludes. You know what I mean?
It's amazing how many like authors and people throughout Black history I learned of through BDP and KRS. When I was telling someone the other day, I remember the first time I heard the song "You Must Learn," and I looked up everybody in the joint. Like I'm like,
I did the same thing. Yo, I did the exact same thing. Like, who is this?
Yep. Which is always funny, right? Because you know the critics of hip hop, and you always say like if hip hop has the ability to like lead us one way, it can always lead us the other way too. Because I vividly remember hearing "You Must Learn," and I'm like, who is Madam C.J. Walker? Like who is Benjamin Banneker? Right. Like so you can start to do that. And back then, like you had to get the encyclopedia and. Yeah, I mean, and some of our folks weren't mentioned, so then you had to go do further research.
And but the beat was decent, and the beat was decent, so it wasn't like I don't really want to listen to this. You know what I mean? Like it was a decent beat, so you actually wanted to listen to the song.
Listen, that's when hip hop had balance. It had balance because there was plenty of gangster stuff out there. You know what I mean? Because we had our NWAs and our Ice-T's and
I mean, KRS-One made the Criminal Minded album.
Listen, there was gangster stuff on both coasts. But what I'm saying is, but you also had your X-Clans and your KRS-Ones and your Poor Righteous Teachers, and you know what I mean, with funky beats that you could still listen to. Brand Nubian, Public Enemy. You know what I mean? Like you had all kinds of Sister Soldier.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
But it goes back to the overall theme is marketing, right? So it's being marketed to us. But anyway, you said Kwame Ture, you actually learned through BDP. That's dope right there itself.
Yeah. But his book Black Power, he co-authored with Charles Hamilton. Actually, rest in peace to Kwame Ture. But rest in peace to Toni Morrison, who was his English professor at Howard, and then she also ended up editing this book when they came out with it. You know what I'm saying? When they was about to drop it, so she actually ended up editing it.
Dope piece of history.
Yeah. Jamil Alameen, formerly known as H. Rap Brown, his autobiography, Die Nigga Die, that changed me because I liked him because I liked what I read in that book because the way his political analysis, it was so like he made it plain, kind of like how Malcolm did. Like I think Malcolm influenced a lot of these guys that came in the Black Power movement. It's clear, you know what I mean? Even Kwame Ture talks about it in his autobiography, Ready for Revolution. But H. Rap Brown's Die Nigga Die, that's another book. It's hard to point out specific, but I know right now I'm reading Amos Wilson, The Falsification. This is long overdue. I should have been read this, but The Falsification of African Consciousness. This right here is a page turner. I know we usually say like fictional novels are page turners, but this is a page turner with just like all the jewels in it, and just because this book is composed of 2 lectures that he gave, one from 91 and one from 93, and then another one is just a written essay. That's chapter 3, just an essay that he wrote that he put in here too, and it's current. Like everything, it just explains just a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? Like just a lot of things. And especially like when you spend a lot of time on, if you're on social media and you hear like some of the opinions that people have and like, okay, like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like you almost like, I mean, and granted, like, so not to sound arrogant because we all need to refine our analysis. And there are certain positions that I hold right now in 2019 that in 2029 I may not hold because of subsequent study and reading, but a lot of things are just very basic and very fun. Like you just be like, bro, like you just haven't read, you know what I'm saying? And then a lot of times it's like, yo, I get it because before I had been exposed to this information, I thought that same dumb shit that you think right now. I get it. Like,
but to me that going back to Malcolm, to me that's what makes him such a like hero of mine is the fact that. And one of the things I learned from his book is how he was able to get more information and then make a turn and say, no, what I thought before was wrong, but he did it multiple times in his life. Yeah. The more information he got, he became a different person, right? Yeah. And I know a lot of times, there's a quote from The Wire from Slim Charles when he talks about, sometimes if it's a lie, you got to fight on that lie, right? I call that the Slim Charles theory. When you see someone who when you see someone
on that hill,
yeah, they know they're wrong, but like I already said this, so I can't turn away from what I once said. You know, they be Slim Charlesing, right? So it's like he was able to get information and be like, look, I know I may sound hypocritical, but now with this information, I believe this now.
Right.
I got new information. You supposed to change your mind with new information.
But that's they know how courageous that is, specifically in that time, that the courage to do that, because people still can't do that in 2019. They can't get new information. You know, you talk about like politicians or what's going on in our current political climate. It's like people feel like, yo, I back this person, you know, or, you know, not to even give an opinion, but the whole idea of the whole Jay-Z argument versus Kaepernick, right? People love Jay-Z, so I'm gonna die on that. I know people that I know that feel like, you know, what he's doing is wrong, and you know, but the fact of the matter is they're going Slim Charles it because that's their guy.
There's this equation. The equation reads as this: cult of personality, and I'm not totally against cult of personality because cult of personality can be helpful at times, but the cult of personality mixed plus the lack of reading equals a whole lot of confusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one thing if you know better, but you like, nah, I know better, but that's for him no matter what. No matter what he do, I'm gonna still ride for him.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are like, you know, because what happens is, that's why if you notice, like in some of my posts online, I don't really target him. I try not to target individuals. What I've been trying to do more so is look at the
ideology.
Look at the ideology that undergirds that position that people have, and I want to go straight to the ideology because a lot of times, because again, cult of personality. If you attack the individual, then people are gonna make it about the individual.
Yeah.
And even if it's Jay-Z, like Jay-Z is not that important. He's only following a blueprint, so to speak, that has been laid out way before him. Like he's not the first black person to do what he's doing now. I mean, he's trying to get his money. I mean, That's it. But I study neocolonialism, and I have to study it a lot more, but I've studied enough of it to know, you know, that this is. I mean, like you have like, you know, a dominant group in a neocolonial situation. You have to have members of the oppressed class seem as though they're making inroads, and give the impression that, you know, that we all can be equal when that's never the goal.
Yeah, say again? You said it's more marketing.
More marketing. Yeah, exactly. More marketing.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And the funny thing is, and you're right. I wasn't even making and the funny thing is, I stayed away from even giving an opinion on that because to me, I sit back and to me, the psychology is interesting to me. To see people's reactions, people are so passionate about it, and when people ask me my opinion,
because I was never even like riding hard for Kaepernick anyway. Because my thing is like, you know, fuck the NFL. Like if we want to play football, let's start our own league. Like let's do that. Now I know that's easier said than done, but I don't even know that it's as difficult as people make it out to be. Especially if you talk about black men and women that have those types of resources. It's really just an issue of the will. You know,
I mean,
the will to do it.
I think about this all the time, right? And but more in terms of the NBA, I'm a bigger NBA fan than the NFL fan. Not that I wasn't an NFL fan. I've actually written a book on sports before, so go get that sportsthebook.com. But anyway, but at the same time, I mean, Ice Cube is actually doing it, right? If you get the best players in the NBA and you get an arena, like you could. I mean, artists do it. They tour. People go see you play. Like so, that to me is probably easier to do than the infrastructure built in the NFL. But at the end of the day, to me, what was interesting about that whole debate was just like the sycophants on both sides who were like they're just arguing regardless of what the facts are. They're not even arguing facts. They're arguing that whole cult of person that personality love.
Yeah.
Don't, like facts don't matter, and that's on both sides. Which is also interesting to me now. You have two, because I spend time on Twitter too, in Black Twitter, which is a powerful thing. But now all they're doing is fighting with each other, the Cap side and the Jay-Z side, and no one's talking about the NFL anymore. I found that interesting.
And I think the environment right now, but it lends itself toward like us. We're supposed to like, stay as far away from critique as possible. Like it's like as if critique won't help. Like if you're building something, like you need people to provide, to provide constructive critique. Now, yeah, constructive, not destructive, not just like, nah, I don't like you, so whatever you're doing, I don't care. Like, but you want to welcome that, because like if I'm building something, I want people that I respect, or I mean, even if I don't really respect you, but you might have an idea, you might think of something that I didn't think of, but I think the environment lets, you're not even supposed to say nothing. You know what I mean?
And that is the environment. The environment is like if I admire you or I'm a fan of your work, I have to agree with everything you do. Which is funny to me, like, and the Trump fans take that to the extreme, right? Like he could do or say anything, but the fact is, like, if you're it's almost like it's like watching life is becoming like wrestling. Like if you like somebody,
it's crazy.
If you like somebody, nothing else matters. That's your guy. Then you Slim Charles it all the way, right? Like it doesn't matter what they do, what they say. I'm riding for my guy. That's an interesting like thing, in the world in general, but in our community, it's kind of crazy because our celebrity worship's on another level. But also talking about. Can I say go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
You brought up so I don't know. This is not. I guess this is not a critique. Maybe I thought it might have been, but it's not even a critique. When you brought up Ice Cube and his league, so I guess it's something I've been thinking about for a while in terms of how do we define actual Black businesses, and what I've been thinking about is this concept of vertical integration, and seeing how, because a lot. So we'll start a Black business. Yeah. But I think the goal should be like, it should be like all Black everything, all the way. So for example, like, so if Ice Cube has the 3-on-3 or the Big Three league, we should own the stadium. There shouldn't be no State Farm insurance advertising. There should be a Black-owned car insurance company advertising. All the food supplies, the concessions, everything is Black. You know what I mean? Like, I think that should be the goal. And I think I want us to start having those conversations about, I mean, that's something I did learn from at Morgan and my, my business training, about the concept of vertical integration and how some companies, they just, from manufacturing to the wholesale to the retail, like we got all that. Like, all that. Like, so when they're doing their like make or buy decisions, like they don't buy nothing, they make it. Like everything is coming from them. And I think that as a community, I think that's something we have to aspire to. Like even with the sister, in North Philly with Country Cooking, I think that, I mean, I appreciate her having the business. I have some challenges with it, but that's not relevant right now. But what is relevant is, I think like for sisters like her and for whoever has a business, like even if you got a restaurant, like where's your chicken coming from? The chicken need to come from somebody Black. Where's your styrofoam containers coming from? Yeah, you need to come from somebody Black. Where's your oven in the back? Where'd that come from? Where your salt and pepper shakers?
It's funny.
Everything.
Like it's interesting you say that, right? Because
supplies that you use to clean the bathroom or to mop up at night, that need to come from somebody Black. Like every single thing that we're doing, every single piece that goes into that business existing and then thriving should come from somebody Black. And I know that that's something that I think that's a mentality first that we have to implant within our young people, so that they'll be like, yeah, we need to do that. Because then what happens is, it's like, oh, like young boy, we really got work for you now. So now,
it's interesting. Like, I feel like I'm talking to Carl. I feel like I'm talking to Carl Tone right now, because that's like something he talks about. But
it's so now math matters now. So now it's like, oh, I care about learning how to do math because I know that I'm trying to build something that's going to support the overall community, and I'm not. Yeah.
But like, I mean that would take. It's going to take us a time to get there because we don't control any natural resources. Like, not let alone natural resources. Like a lot of resources in general.
I mean, that's when the fight's going to start. I mean, to be quite honest, I mean that is when the fight's going to start. Because if you're talking about, I mean, you gotta, we talking about. Well, I want to buy salmon from a Black person. I want to buy chicken from a Black person. I want collard greens to come from a Black person. I want all my best foods. That means we got to own the farms. And if we own the farms, it means we own the land. And again, back to what Malcolm was talking about, revolutions are about land. We talk about that, the ballad of the bullet. Revolutions are about land. And because once you got the land and you got everything's going to grow from the land.
Yes.
So, these are serious conversations we got to have.
Yo, and you know what's crazy about that is it's like I said, it's going to take a time to get there, and I don't even know Cube's ownership percentage of that league or what have you. I was more talking about the infrastructure in terms of just renting arenas and all that. But you're correct in terms of like you said, getting those resources, because some of those resources are available from our people right now, and we still don't support them. Whether we're talking about cleaning products, paper towels, those things we already do make, but a lot of us don't support it. So that is going to be a challenge, and you're right. That's also going to be a huge fighting point when we start to pull away that way and using all of our own things. Right? It's okay for us to make a certain level of income if they're still eating with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As soon as you start cutting off they money, then they integrated everything but the money. They always talk about integration. They integrated everything but the resources and the money.
Well, that's when they start changing laws, right? And that's where like one of my favorite books comes into play. The whole idea of powernomics, right? Is using the capital that we get to buy the influence. It's something else we mentioned. So we're talking about like books or what have you that let us. I mean, I knew this was going to be a long conversation because brother Akil, like we could go for days talking to him. But the thing is though, Kwame Ture is interesting too, right? I always go back and you ever watch that video when he's walking with like Martin, and like he's giving his opinion and Martin's giving his opinion. Like to me, that's also one of the most courageous moments I saw. Like, because when you read about how Dr. King is revered, and you got this young guy who's like who's going a completely different direction, and he's like sitting in front of him, but he's still being like respectful and like just disagreeing with him on camera. To me, that was like one of the most illest things I think I've ever seen. Like, I'm like, yo, this dude was ill. Yeah, but he was still like, but he was showing him respect, but like completely like disagreeing with him at the same time. I said, that's like, to me, that was like ill. I was like, yo, he's ill.
Because it was partly my study of Kwame Ture that opened my eyes up to what I call the real king, or at least king toward the end of his life. Like the king that king became when it means, okay, we gotta kill him. You know what I mean? Like
when they start talking about when he starts talking about money, when he starts talking about economics, they opened his head up. I mean, he had to go. Simply because when you, and this is something that me and Jim talked about privately, but I'll put it on our podcast. But when you have that kind of sphere of influence that he had over people, it doesn't really mean anything unless you start talking about the economic empowerment of those people, right? So as long as he was talking about social change, he was fine. Yeah. As soon as he started talking about economic change, he had to get out of here. Yeah. Because now when you start talking about empowering hundreds of thousands of millions and millions of people, that right there makes you dangerous, because then our government loses control of those people because they don't control those people's time anymore. Because the more resources you have, the less control they have of your time.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know we had conversations about the value of time before, and lo and behold, I guess it's like what do they call it, synchronicity or whatever. I was tutoring a young sister tonight, and she had a workbook she had to complete for the summertime in order to get her to help get ready for like the 7th grade. So it was a particular problem that we went over, and it tied into that concept. And I'm gonna read the problem to you, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about like the type of conversation we had. So the problem was, it was number 4 on this particular page. And we were doing an exercise with like the coordinate plane and the different grid and the points. We were talking about salary. So it was cool before I even get to this question, because it was cool because then I was like, it's like, when a lot of times when we teach math is real abstract, because it's just, equations, X's and Y's and numbers, and with no real life application. But what has to happen is it has to be, in order for it to be effective, it's got to be a narrative attached to it, where you really tell a story about like, okay, like what's the value of these numbers? So we end up having this conversation about salary versus hourly employees. We start talking about what overtime means, how to calculate that. How do you calculate time and a half? How do you calculate double time? Then when does that happen? Or like, or as an employee, you're an hourly employee, and then a supervisor comes to you and says, well, you know what, we're thinking of promoting you, and then you're going to be salaried. And then I was telling the sister, I was like, listen, you got to know how to do the mathematics, because a lot of times you might end up making less money, but they'll gas you up and tell you like, you'll get more credit, more prestige, more credibility. You'll get to wear a uniform, different color uniform shirt. You'll have authority over people.
But they ain't giving you no more money. They give you everything but money.
And you might make less money actually, like, depending on how the numbers work out. And then, same thing with like sales jobs versus, sometimes you're in a sales position where it's like the sky's the limit, or, you could be the salary manager, you know what I'm saying? So it was cool because, and she's sitting there like, she like, kind of in awe, like I can tell she's never had this conversation before. And I think like that's the power of mathematics, because mathematics kind of puts all that into perspective. And then you kind of just let the young people know, like, listen, like, if you don't know, like, we also use it as a way to like explain how America operates. America is set up, it's a bunch of robbers and thieves, and somebody will try to outsmart you or rob you or exploit you in some kind of way at every corner. And if you can't protect yourself against that, then they're going to get you. And the thing is, they'll smile in your face while they're doing it. And if you don't know no better, because you can't do the calculations, you can't defend yourself against it. You know what I'm saying? So we was talking about all that. But then the number 4, this is what I wanted to get to. Number 4 from the worksheet said, how many hours, because the brother in the program problem, his name was Marshall, right? So it said, how many hours will Marshall have to work if he is saving to buy a $300 game system, right? Now, we already calculated that from number 1, we had to calculate how much his hourly wage was. It was $7.50. So now, boom, this opens the door. Now we can have a conversation about your point, which is time. Like, so now it's not, because money is real abstract. Like money, like what does $300 even mean? What does $1,000 even mean? Like, what does that mean? But what's not abstract is how many hours of my life that I have to spend to do that I cannot get back. Mm-hmm. I can't get them hours back. You can get robbed and go make the money again, get the money back. But time in your life, you can't get that back. And you're making a sacrifice because you could have spent that time doing anything. You could have spent it with family, could have spent it with friends, you could have spent it sleeping, you could have spent it, doing a lot of stuff. You could have spent it,
whatever you want, basically. Yeah.
But a math problem like that puts it in perspective, and you start to like have these conversations with the youth. It's like, because they might want to pay a $900 Balenciagas for the prom or whatever. And you say their mom and dad might say, well, shit, you want them, go get a job and go save up for them. And I mean, we dealing with, dialectical materialism, like everything is good and bad at the same time. So on the one hand, it's like, okay, I respect your grind. I respect your quote unquote hustle, that you were able to, secure employment, and you went to work, you were consistent, you were responsible, and you saved the $900 for a pair of shoes. But then we got to also think about, well, how many hours of your life
did you give away for $900?
For $900. So the cost of the shoe is not just the $900. The cost of the shoe is hours of your life and minutes of your life that you cannot get back. And then you have to ask yourself, like, was that worth it?
Yeah. And I think that, and that's the thing about like, luxury items or what have you, is because when we look at them, we're not looking at a price tag. We're looking at the time it takes to get that. Right. and Corey always often talk. And by the way, for those out there, we also wrote the book Own Your Time and Space, written by myself and Corey. And Corey goes into the detail.
I still need to get a copy of that.
I got you. Corey goes into detail. One of the things he says that I find interesting, because he writes the part about time, I write about space, but is how we all don't live the same 24 hours, right? So if you have resources, your 24 hours looks different than someone who doesn't have resources.
Right.
And when we look at things that are luxury, so if you take yourself back to being a teenager, you see someone with the new Jordans and the new Balenciagas, like what you're looking at is like how much time it takes to get that. Like that, because that's the only thing that's valuable is our time, right? Our time has so much value to it that we're like, yo, if you're able to get this, that, and the third, like you have more time than me. Like, yeah, like you.
That's and what people will do is draw a level of respect, based on the amount of time it takes to buy something, right? Because that's what price tells you. Price says, if I give you $100,000 price tag, and you can afford that, that means that you were so efficient with your time that you were able to afford something that costs $100,000. And if I can't afford it, then and people will base their, so what I talk about in the book that you just put up is, if I call you a janitor or if I call you a CEO, right? People will base how they talk to you based on the time that it takes to become either one of those things, right?
Yeah.
People will say it didn't take a lot of time to become a janitor, but it took him forever to become a CEO, not knowing whether or not that man got, put in that position as a CEO without having to do anything to get that position. And it took me more time to get that job as a janitor.
Right.
And it doesn't say how well either one of those people do their job. And it doesn't say how well either one of those people will treat you.
Well, that goes back to the overall theme of marketing, right? So marketing is about, it kind of like tells us what the value, right? So one of the things, and here's a little tip for people out there, like, so everyone knows I'm in the real estate game, right? So one of the things I learned to do is if I'm applying for a loan at a bank or something, to do any sort of investment or development, I started including a resume, right? Which they don't even ask for. I just add it. Like, so that sometimes you could add a bio, and I add a resume and put that I have a master's degree in real estate, right? And that actually helps. And I've had like lenders tell me like, oh, you have that, because what they're looking at is the time it took me to get that. Our degrees are a measurement of time.
That's all they are.
When you look at someone that's having a bachelor's degree or even you could do a PhD or you put a level of respect based upon the time you think it took them to get that, right? Which is why some people get upset at, like, I know people who hate people with like honorary degrees. They be like, he got an honorary degree
because they didn't put the time behind it.
Because they feel like they didn't put that time in, right? You know what I mean? Because so
they're not even mad at the degree. They don't care about the degree. They're not mad at the person for the degree. They mad at that they put the time in and the other person didn't have to put any time into it.
Yeah. But that's what it all boils down. All boils down to time, man. Man, listen, we could go on forever, man. Because we gotta come to a close soon, man. But any other books that you want to mention before we get out of here? Because you mentioned some powerful books. That Kwame Ture book and Charles Hamilton. I actually haven't read that. I got to get on that.
Let me recommend. This brother was one of the founders of ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. Jacob.
Raise it up. We can't see the.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Intellectual warfare.
Yeah,
okay.
Intellectual warfare.
Interesting.
Jacob Carruthers, and he was a political scientist and a historian, and as I said, one of the founders of ASCAC. ASCAC was it was like five people that founded it. It was him. It was Asa Hilliard, who wrote extensively on African-centered education. Then you had John Henrik Clarke, one of my other intellectual heroes. Dr. Ben, you know what I mean. Who else was one of the founders? A sister, Nzinga Radabishi Haru was one of the founding members. If it was anybody else, forgive me. Their name escapes me right now. But Intellectual Warfare. It's a compilation of essays where he talks about, and this is why I like, again, in terms of like looking at like neo-colonialism and like it's in a historical context, he talks about the intellectual, like Africans and Europeans, but he also talks about, he's got a section in here called the intellectual civil war. So where he's talking about like, between black people, because we got different ideas, and some of us have different goals. See, that's the thing. It's like sometimes we have the same goal, but we just have different ways of getting at it. Like Malcolm said in the Battle of the Bullet, you know what I mean? But sometimes we don't even really have the same goals but they try to make it seem like we got the same goals. We just, we can go about it in different ways. I'm like, if we got the same goal and you think this way will work and I think that way, you're going to work this side of the street, I'm going to work this side of the street. That's cool. I'm with that. But if you sitting up here, like I use this analogy, like if I'm trying to dig a ditch, right? And every time I shovel, and I move some dirt out of the ditch into a pile, and you right behind me taking dirt and throwing it back in the ditch, then we don't have the same goal. You trying to fill the hole back up. I'm trying to dig a ditch.
It's crazy you said that. I had this conversation on Sunday, Corey. We sitting there talking. When we were talking, we were talking about it was a bunch of us talking about the Jay-Z Cap thing, and I made that same point. I was like, I feel like if we're working towards the same common goal, even if we fundamentally disagree, as long as we're both moving, it's funny you say that. It was almost verbatim.
Yep.
It's almost verbatim. That
I might think that your method and strategy is ridiculous, but if I'm like, you know what, I think he wants the same thing. I don't know how it's going to work that way. You know what I mean? I might not be able to. So in terms of working side by side with you, but I'm gonna leave you alone because I don't see that what you're doing is going against or is a detriment to what I'm over here doing. But once I see that, then it's like we're not on the same page. We're not going in the same direction. And I think again that comes from the lack of study, because I think people will get caught up in again the cult of personality, and the emotion, and it's like
I
like
what,
this person.
I actually used to.
So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
I used to actually be one of that comes through maturity, right? Because I always mentioned that like I'm a student of Dr. Claude Anderson, so I remember the first time I read Powernomics and how it changed me, and that became like my motive. Like that was like the blueprint of what I want to do. And people who didn't agree, I would get in these heated debates with people. But then as I got older and matured, and like you said, did more reading, and you start to understand that if we have the same goal, like I may disagree with you 100%, but I can't be mad at you as long as I feel like you're working for the betterment of our people. Like, how can I be upset at that, right? When there's other people who look like me who aren't working for the betterment of our people,
who are doing nothing or just a plain old anchor.
Yeah,
like just an anchor.
So I get people all the time who criticize like our brothers. This brothers sisters out here doing real work in the streets, and I see people criticizing. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Well, nothing.
First question.
First question. What are we talking about then? Like, you're not doing anything at all. Right?
If they're doing something and you're not doing anything, then your opinion is meaningless.
There you go. And it also, the last thing I want to bring up, you said the name Nzinga, right? Which is interesting because I just read The Destruction of the Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams.
Chancellor Williams, yeah.
Yeah, and that was
with Dr. Clark.
That's one of he has several stories in that book about Queen Nzinga, and that was that's the first time I read some of those stories, and I'm like, wow, it's almost like hidden history.
since you bring that up, let me you just triggered me just now. It's an essay it's an essay I'm going to write that I have not written yet. It's about my personal feelings about Portugal as a nation. I don't fuck with Portugal, like fuck Portugal, and there's a historical reason for that. So you bring up Nzinga, Queen Nzinga down in what's Angola. The Portuguese attempted to colonize, and she fought, tooth and nail for years against the Portuguese. But later, you mentioned honorary degrees. So my man Amilcar Cabral, who was a revolutionary leader of PAIGC in that's where he was from. He was educated. He understood about the land too. So to him understanding the land, he went to Portugal because Guinea-Bissau and the Cape Verde Islands was a Portuguese colony. So he ended up going and getting educated in Portugal, got his agricultural engineering degree, came back to the land, came back home. In 1972, Lincoln gave him a honorary degree. That's the reason I went to Lincoln for my master's.
Okay.
A book came in the mail. It was time for me to make my decision. A book came in the mail. Of his it was either a biography or it was a book of his speeches. But anyway, there's a picture in it of him accepting his degree back in 1972. But anyway, the reason I say fuck Portugal, besides the fact that they're imperialists and they colonized our people and brutalized our people for hundreds of years, is that when they assassinated Cabral, they assassinated him in 1973. It was a sister that's named by Titina Silla. Titina Silla also was part of PAIGC, also a soldier. 10 days later, his funeral was to take place. He got assassinated in January. 10 days later, his funeral was to take place. They catch her on the way to the funeral and kill her. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, so when I read that, I just was like, man, like that, I try, most of the time I remain objective about things, but that affected me emotionally because I'm like, damn, like she can't even, y'all didn't even let her go pay her respects at this man's funeral. He was their lead. He was their leader. You know what I'm saying? This sister was, fighting, side by side with him. You know what I mean? And she's on her way to the funeral and y'all take her out. You know what I mean? Y'all had to know she was going to the funeral too. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's why I'll be like, fuck Portugal. You know what I mean?
I can't wait to read that. And it's funny you mentioned Cabral. First time I heard of Cabral, speaking of hip hop, was Dead Prez.
Okay.
Yep.
So you know what I mean? Like
music is the introduction to a lot of it, man.
Yeah. But those kind of artists, right? So man, there's a lot of information in this episode, man. So Brother Akil, man, before we get out of here, how can people that want to follow your work and see what you're doing with All This Math, how can they get in touch with you? All
right, so the All This Math website is www.allthismath.com. All This Math is one word, ALLTHISMATH. So allthismath.com. You can see some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that we have planned. me and my wife, again, trying to do the, Malcolm X, Betty Shabazz thing, trying to do the Garvey, Amy Jacques Garvey. Well, actually, both his wives. He had two wives. Both was named Amy Ashwood first, and then Amy Jacques Garvey. Robert F. Williams and I can't remember Robert F. Williams' wife's name, but what's her name? Anyway, it escapes me. But anyway, trying to do the the strong black family thing. So we working on the business together. She has a certain skill set that I don't have in terms of like marketing and create a little like creativity and planning and organizing. Mm-hmm. So I try to play to my strengths and let her play to hers. So yeah, allthismath.com. And you can find me on Instagram, Akil, AKIL _Lateef, LATEEF. Also Twitter, same handle, Akil _Lateef. And on Facebook, I use my government name, Akil Parker.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
With my slave name, as I say.
I'll make sure to put the links to all that in the description of this on the podcast as well as the webcast, man. But we just want to say thank you for your time, man. And man, we enjoyed this conversation. We could have did, you know how it is. Me and Akil get in a conversation sometimes. I'm like, man, we got to stop because we'll be here all day. Like, but listen, man.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your work, brother. And also, I also want to say this before we get out of here. Like, in terms of social media, I love your posts. Like, I don't comment on a lot of them because y'all people like some of your flat earth friends and all that. Like, I can't get in. I don't want to engage in that, but. But I love your post because sometimes it'll give me a different perspective on things, right? So you have some of the most engaging commentary, and I learn a lot. You know what I mean? I learn a lot through that. So you actually teach. You're using social media to teach. I try to set it up. I try to set the page up kind of like a classroom, because sometimes I just put out questions and I'm like, I want to see how I don't know a lot about this, but I know somebody. I got almost 5,000 friends. Like somebody know about this. Yeah. So
somebody's gonna be able to contribute some information.
So I just want to give you props on that because you're using it the right way. Because people, I talk all the time. People use social media for all kinds of stuff. I see people that make money on social media. I see people that do nothing but look at buns on social media. But you're using it to teach your people. So I just want to tell you thank you for that.
I mean, and truth be told, I need to start making some money on it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But listen, man, we appreciate it, man. I want to say thank you to our listeners out there. We want to say, as we always do, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you keep. Game elevates, man, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right, peace.
All right, peace.